Hey Zen fam! So, this response video is for Goldtooth Gamer. Goldtooth Gamer, the girthiest gamer on YouTube. I hope that was alright for you, Goldtooth. I'm not much of a singer. I'm more a death metal guy. I used to sing in a couple of death metal bands in my late teens, early 20s. But that was a long time ago. So, Mr. Goldtooth Gaming put out a little video where he was wondering where some of his YouTube brethren kind of got their start in gaming. The people that made them basically the gamers that they are. I only have one real example. There are other people that have come along and, you know, lent me equipment or introduced me to titles and stuff. But when I get right down to the nitty gritty, there was one person who was basically the genus or whatever of me as a gamer. And probably also the most important person in anybody's life. And that's my mum. Now, unfortunately, my mother is no longer with us, so I can't thank her for this now, but basically without my mum, I don't know if I'd be the gamer I am now. I probably would have eventually got into it, because that's just the kind of geek I am, but yeah, when I think about it long and hard, every formative moment in gaming that I've ever had has had one connection or another with my mum. It was my mum that basically took me to a cafe. Now, admittedly, I was with my dad, but my dad was never really much of a parent, so, you know, I put this down to my mum that we went to this cafe, and she was the one that said it was okay, and I sat down at this tabletop 2-player Galaxian unit, and that was the first video game I ever played. Then in later years, not long before or after, it's hard to know because I was a kid and a long time ago, but round about the time of the divorce, I do remember my mother getting me a little gaming unit, which was like a screen that was kind of planted on top of another section of plastic. It had a little joystick and 2 little buttons and this round monitor arrangement with a screen that was set into it and at a slight angle. It was kind of a Space Invaders-esque clone-like thing. I can't remember its name, I just remember the unit was like 2 different shades of grey and darker grey, and the screen itself was black, and there wasn't many, if any, colours in the spaceship design sort of sprites, and obviously the thing that shot the spaceships. I can't even really remember much what the shapes were like. I just remembered it was a kind of a bit like Space Invaders, because, you know, I was super young. And then a few years after that, I do remember I had this Pac-Man unit. Now, whether or not it was officially Pac-Man, I honestly can't say, but it was like a yellow disc with like a raised lump. It was all smoothed down, kind of looked a bit like the original G1 interpretation of Bumblebee's Cybertronian form. If that gives you an idea of how to get your head around the shape of this thing. With a black screen, controls at the front, and a very simple version of Pac-Man. Now, whether or not it was licensed, I couldn't tell you, because yet again, I was enormously young. All these things were given to me by my mother. Then quite a few more years pass, and my mum, being a single mum at this point, and like all single mothers, somehow are just made of magic, because they managed to do everything on no money at all. My mum somehow got me and my sister a Commodore 16, one of the early, microcomputers. Now, it was all for the gaming, and, I think the main reason she got that is so I'd have to read box art, I'd have to read things. It was basically to try and get me to work around my dyslexia. That's what she did with comics. She got me into Transformers, or so rather she saw that I liked Transformers, and she bought me the videos and I was watching the cartoon, and then she started buying me the comic of Transformers, and she used to read bits of it for me, and she read less of it for me and less of it for me, because by that point I was hooked. And then I was reading it, and then it got to a point where like less and less I was coming through to the lounge to ask her what the words were that I was reading. So my mum was sneaky. It's like, so by a combination of gaming and Transformers comics, this helped with my dyslexia, And so playing on the Commodore 16, buying my own games, reading the blurb on the back of the box art, so then I could know what the game was about and what I'd be doing in the game, or whether or not I wanted to buy it. Yeah, and then even more later years down the line, it's sort of like telling me that my sister's boyfriend was looking to sell his OG PlayStation. Now, some of you have heard this story before, but some of you are pretty new. My sister's boyfriend of that period, right, this is a long time ago. I mean, we're talking like late 94, early 95. I forget precisely when, but the PlayStation was less than a year old, okay? He'd bought the PlayStation, the original Model 1 with all the ports PlayStation. And he had a couple of games for it. He had Tekken and he had Ridge Racer. I bought the whole lot off him, get this, right, 80 quid. Now, when you remember how much that system came out at, and what the games cost at the time, 80 quid. I mean, I basically walked into his home and stole it from him for that kind of money. But you know why he sold it? This is the best bit, right? The basic reason I figured he sold it is because he didn't know that you have to buy a memory card to save your game progress. Because this is back in the day of memory cards. I mean, by the time we hit PlayStation 3, we didn't have memory cards anymore, we had internal storage. But the original PlayStation and the PS2 didn't have that kind of internal storage for game saves. So, after initially buying those games and playing them for a couple of months without memory cards, while I saved for a memory card because I knew it needed a memory card, I got really good at those games, playing the same levels over and over and over and over again, the same races over and over and over again, By the time I got the memory card, I absolutely annihilated those games. But I would never have had the PlayStation if my mum had not told me about it, and, suggested that the money that I had saved, I could use it to buy my sister's boyfriend's PlayStation. And if I hadn't bought that PlayStation, then, the Lord knows when I would have ever got round to it, because I always saw the PlayStation in the shops and stuff. I saw it on telly, like by watching stuff like Bad Influence and like Games Master and stuff. And I always liked the look of it, but I just never thought I'd ever be able to afford it because I knew it was this incredibly expensive item. So that's what set me down, the PlayStation route effectively. It's my mother that basically made me a PlayStation gamer, that made me a modern video gamer. And even after I bought, and even before that, when my mum and dad were on slightly better terms and he was having access to me, and we would actually go on family sort of trip outing type things, it was my mum that suggested that we go to the arcades down at Porty Beach. Because Portobello Beach used to be amazing for arcades, There was like 3 really good ones. And in the years gone by, 2 of those really great arcades have long since gone. In fact, one of them is now just a set of luxury apartments. Ooh, luxury apartments in Edinburgh. Who'd have thunk it? So, the only reason that I'm not taking you on tours of these places, which I believe was one of the stipulations that Goldtooth put down, is because a lot of these places that I experienced these things don't exist anymore, or I don't have access to. I don't have access to my mum's old flat, you know. I definitely don't have access to the arcades down in Porty because they're no longer existing, you know. And I, you know, can't talk to my mum about this because she's no longer with us, so I have to go with my memories. But yeah, going to that arcade, you know, was me really getting my start in arcades. It's sort of like, I mean, I'd been to arcades here and there as a kid, but nothing proper. But it was after that visit, when I went there a few times, and not only that, I took myself there on the bus, you know, and I used to take myself there to go just play video games with my own money, you know. So she got me into arcade gaming, she got me into console gaming. My mum basically, as the point of this video is, she's the one that made me the gamer I am today, you know. And yeah, I mean, she knew that I made videos on YouTube before she passed and stuff. I don't think she ever watched any of my content. I mean, she was probably never interested in that. But she was always supportive of anything I ever did that was an interest. I mean, when I used to study martial arts, she used to pay my yearly membership fee to the World Kutso One Association, you know. And she always backed me up, and she always was like, you know, even if she didn't understand what I was doing, she was always interested in it. So that is basically the number one person that made me the gamer essentially that I am, was my mum. So thanks, Mum. You set me down this road, and wow, have I travelled down it. Anyway, Goldtooth, I hope that's a good enough response to you. Sorry it took so long to get this response video. I've been crazy busy, and there's been a family funeral and all kinds of stuff going on, and busy with work and all the rest of it. But I hope this meets the remit that you suggested in your video, and that you find this response well. And hopefully my singing wasn't too awful. Okay, guys, hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, aye, nae bother.